Hey everybody, John O'Connor here again, and today I'd like to bring you another installment of bucket list characters. Characters I wish to play before I kick the bucket. But before we get started with that, I just have one small note. I've been playing around with YouTube and looking at different things, and you can see who subscribes and who likes. But a cool little thing I found is that what countries are viewing my videos. And of course there was the United States and Canada, I wasn't surprised there. But then I saw other people have been watching, such as Iceland, United Kingdoms, Denmark, Ireland, Spain, Sweden, and I was just kind of impressed. I've lived in South Texas all of my life, so to see that people in distant countries are watching and hopefully enjoying my videos, it was kind of humbling to, go, wow, that's kind of cool. So, if you are a non-resident of the United States and you're watching this video right now, or any of my other ones, please tell me who you are, I'll give you a shout out. I'm like a kid in a candy store with this YouTube thing. Every time that the new update comes, I'm like, oh cool, how many people like my video? How many people disliked it? I don't care if the feedback's positive or negative. I just like looking at the new stats. It's really fun just to play around with that little part. Alright, so bucket list character for the day. Prisoner 134. This is an interesting character who I've tried to play once, but the setting wasn't right for it, so I'd love to give it another go someday. Prisoner 134 doesn't have a particular class behind him. In fact, the character building part, as far as that would be concerned, is he, at level 20, I'd like him to have one class of everything, with the exclusion of Druid, Paladin, Sorcerer, any of the other ones. Like, you have to be a very strict alignment restriction and things of that nature, or you had to take it at level 1 or else you can't get into it. So I want him to be a little bit of everything. And the idea behind him is he's a lowly human, and he is kind of a victim of circumstance. He was caught stealing in a highly dense elven land, and without any human advocates, he was very much subjugated to elven law. And the crime for theft was, in this particular case, 15 years. Well, I mean, he's a young punk kid, nowhere between 14 and 16, and he's locked away for 15 years. No chance of parole, no nothing. And to make matters worse, it's pretty much isolated confinement. He's in solitary for most of this. And 15 years is a good chunk of a life to waste away in a prison cell. But, again, without a human advocate, no one to go, hey, I understand you want to take some of his freedoms and life away for a while, but you can't subjugate him to elven law, you need to subjugate him to human law, because there's a difference here. But no one was there to speak for him, no one was there to, take up for him. He had a family, he had a love interest, that was all before he went in. And for the next 15 years, his only enjoyment came from reading. So he would read other he would read the tomes of other adventurers. He would read how other people did heroic feats, or, served a noble king or slayed a mighty dragon. And that's all he did. He just read. His two high stats are going to be intelligence and wisdom. So I'm planning on burning a lot of points on this character for languages. He's going to learn languages relatively quickly. He's going to be that character. If you've ever served time in prison, or worked with somebody who has, or have a loved one who works in a correctional facility, you understand when all you have is an 8x8 cell and time to learn, well, you learn a lot of things. The removal of freedom is a great learning aid, believe it or not. So during his time, he just studied and studied. So I give him the jack of all trades feat at first level, so he would have one skill point in every trained and untrained skill, regardless of his class, just for the fact of, he knows a little bit of everything. But his first level would be wizard. Now you're thinking, well, he's not a trained wizard. How did he do that? Somewhere in the last 3 years of his sentence, they were doing they're not going to give you more than one book at a time, and most of the time they just randomly throw you a book. So he's read and reread a lot of the same source material. But when the book exchange does come by, or the scroll exchange, whatever it's going to be, they ask you, are you done reading? And if you say no, you keep it. So for 3 years, some aimless guard gave him a level 1 wizard spell book that didn't have any kind of focus, it didn't have any kind of structure to it, it wasn't protected or enchanted at all. Yes, you have to be able to read magic to read a spell book, but he taught himself to read this wizard spell book. He just studied it and studied it and studied it, looked for patterns, looked for symbols that came up more than once. And by just sheer focusing on this one task for 3 years, taught himself the arcane secrets behind it. Problem though was, any spell that had a spell component, he didn't have the components. And it was very much, he was learning for the sake of learning at this point. He knew that if he tried to break out, he was just going to get years added to his sentence. So he bid his time for 15 years, lost everything. His sense of identity, he had no reflective surface, so he didn't know what he looked like. Yeah, he was very much a broken man by the time he gets out of there. But he last defiant act, I guess, against the elves. He takes the spell book, he says it's one of his things when he leaves. So, leaves the prison. Now he's in his early 30s. Has no trainable skill, he has no skills as far as to enter a workforce. But he's a wizard. He's learned to become a wizard. Doesn't really have the money to go get spell components, though. He very much has to fend for himself and only use spells right now that don't require material components. And so that would be how his story begins. An unabashful hatred toward elves and just losing 15 years of his life. An understanding of the arcane, but no desire to continue to learn after that. Again, that was what he did for the last 3 years. He had a task and he finished it. He has no desire to continue that task. But he read how thieves worked, he read how fighters worked. So he wants to take the rest of his life and become a student of it. He wants to be a student of everything that he can possibly try. He wants to learn how to become a fighter. He wants to learn how to become a barbarian. He wants to master nothing but dabble in everything. Just because that's what he has value in now, is learning. That's what he did for 15 years, and that's what he wants to do with the rest of his life. Learn what he wants to learn, how he wants to learn it. Tell me what you guys think. Would you let me play this in your campaign? And I hope you guys are enjoying this. Please like, subscribe, and share.